Today we're venturing into the very unsettling maze of Stanley Kubrick's 1980 film, The Shining.
Yeah, quite a film. It took Stephen King's novel and, well, really twisted it into something uniquely Kubrickian, left a huge mark on horror.
Absolutely. It's, less a straight adaptation and more like a deep reimagining. Still sparks so much debate, doesn't it?
It really does.
We're here today to really try and get under the skin of what makes this movie tick, why it's so potent, so enduring.
And at its core, The Shining, it's about a descent, wouldn't you say? Not just into madness, but into the place itself. The Overlook Hotel feels like a character, radiating this dread.
Totally. So our mission today is to unpack all those layers, the meaning, the artistry Kubrick brought. We'll be looking at some professional film critiques and also this really interesting Cielo Mexico article, El Resplandor de Stanley Kubrick, un sistema de colores y pasiones.
Sounds good. That color article is fascinating.
All right, so let's dive in. How did Kubrick take King's, very personal story and morph it into this almost mythic exploration of evil?
Well, it's fascinating when you look at that core shift. King's novel, it was very much an intimate battle, wasn't it? Addiction, family trying to find redemption against, inner demons and outside forces.
Right, and the supernatural stuff often felt like a reflection of Jack's own struggles.
Exactly, and the ending, the hotel burning down, it offered this sense of release, catharsis.
Yeah, a kind of cleansing fire. But Kubrick, he seemed drawn to something else, something bigger, almost this idea of inescapable cycles, preordained darkness, maybe.
Precisely. Kubrick's film, it sort of downplays the overt supernatural bits. Instead, it focuses on history repeating itself, this cyclical violence, malevolence. He seems more interested in asking, does evil live in places, or is it just part of human nature?
Rather than just Jack's personal breakdown.
Right. The film makes Jack seem pretty fragile right from the start, and that oppressive feel of the Overlook just becomes this dominant force.
And that shift, it really changes the whole mood, doesn't it? I always remember Kubrick's pacing being so deliberate, almost suffocating. What do you think that adds?
Well, that deliberate pace, it creates this constant undercurrent of unease. It's not really about jump scares.
Yeah.
It's more this pervasive feeling that something is just fundamentally wrong right from the beginning. It lets the Overlook's atmosphere kind of seep into you, the viewer, just like it does the characters. And the ending, of course, that's the biggest contrast with the book, trading that catharsis for just haunting ambiguity.
Which famously, Stephen King really didn't like. He felt Kubrick missed that personal struggle, the addiction angle.
Yeah, and that Jack was presented as sort of inherently broken from the get-go.
Right.
That's a really key point. King felt the nuance of Jack's slide was lost, that he wasn't really sympathetic in Kubrick's version.
Right.
But yeah, many critics argue that exact divergence, moving away from the personal towards something more archetypal, is what makes Kubrick's film such a unique, enduring piece of art. It's its own thing.
Okay, so let's dig into the Overlook itself. It's so much more than just a creepy hotel, isn't it? It almost feels alive. What gives you that feeling?
Well, thinking about Kubrick's whole approach, the Overlook works almost like a psychological landscape, but, made physical. It's got this palpable history. You see glimpses of its past.
Yeah.
And it seems to actively influence people, almost like it has a will.
And the visual design is just so striking. Those endless corridors, that weird symmetry, how rooms seem huge but also trap you. It really messes with your head. How does that play into the themes?
Oh, the design is crucial. That meticulous, often disorienting look. Kubrick's use of symmetry, it's almost obsessive, creates this unease, like an unnatural order that hints something's deeply wrong.
Yeah, it's unsettling.
And the corridors that seem to go on forever, rooms connecting in ways that don't make sense. It feeds that feeling of being trapped physically and mentally. Even the carpet.
Oh, the carpets, yeah.
That famous hallway pattern, the hexagonal one outside 237.
Yeah.
They create this hypnotic visual rhythm that just subtly undermines your sense of reality. And the colors, too, those vivid, sometimes jarring colors on the doors and walls, add to this feeling of a space operating outside normal rules.
And then you have those flashes of the hotel's past. Grady, the caretaker before Jack.
Right.
The old photos, especially that final one, the 1921 party with Jack right there.
Right.
It suggests this cycle of violence isn't new at all, is it?
It's really disturbing how Kubrick weaves those fragments in. Grady's story, the photos, and then Jack suddenly appearing in that 1921 picture. It all points to this cyclical violence within the Overlook.
Like it's stuck in a loop.
Exactly, as if the hotel exists outside linear time, just repeating its dark past, absorbing people.
So is the hotel causing the madness? Or is it just a place where, I don't know, existing darkness gets amplified?
Yeah.
What do you make of that ambiguity?
That's really the central, unsettling question Kubrick leaves hanging, isn't it? Is the Overlook genuinely haunted in that traditional way? Or does the isolation, the oppressive atmosphere, just feed the capacity for madness already inside someone like Jack?
And he never gives a clear answer.
Nope. And that refusal is key to the film's power. It taps right into our own feels of the unknown, the potential for darkness we can't explain.
Okay, now let's shift to that Silo, Mexico article.
Yeah.
It has this really fascinating take on the film's use of color, calling it a passion system. Can you sort of break down what they mean by that?
Sure. The article basically argues that Kubrick uses a very deliberate, very contrasting color palette in The Shining. And these colors are directly tied to the film's big emotions, madness, frenzy, horror. The author talks about a semi-symbolic link.
Semi-symbolic.
Yeah, where the visuals themselves, the plastic formants, so the shapes, the colors on screen, directly communicate these underlying passions, these intense feelings.
Okay, interesting. So how does this visual language of color actually unfold as the movie goes on?
Well, initially the film uses a more muted, kind of naturalistic palette. Lots of greens outdoors, beige, neutral tones in the early hotel scenes. Clothes are often gray, blue, brown, white. It feels almost normal, like you said earlier.
Yeah, kind of baseline reality.
Yeah.
But then, bang, comes the red. Where does that first really hit you?
The color red makes a really deliberate, really impactful entrance. You think of the red elevator, apparently inspired by one in Frank Lloyd Wright's Biltmore Hotel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the red columns, red walls in some areas, even small things like the red feathers on Danny's darts, or the really bright red felt on the pool table. And interestingly, it's around then we first see the Grady twins.
Huh. That sudden visual punch of red definitely feels like a shift, doesn't it? Like a warning sign flashing.
Absolutely. And the article points out how this ramps up as the story moves forward. In the A Month Later section, you see red painted floors, carpets with really strong red geometric patterns. Danny's often wearing a red sweater. And this is also when Danny has that first properly disturbing vision, the Grady twins' murder, with blood being such a key visual. So red gets increasingly tied to these violent flashes.
And then there's that brief moment, Monday, where it goes back to cooler colors, blues and whites. What's the significance there?
The article sees that brief return to blue, white, darker tones as maybe a moment of relative calm before the storm, a temporary pause before everything really descends into madness.
Which is then totally blown away by the explosion of red in the Wednesday section. It's almost overwhelming then.
Exactly. By Wednesday, red is just everywhere. Danny and Jack are often in red clothes. Danny's blood visions get more graphic, matching the elevator's color. Jack's in the gold room, which is swimming in red armchairs, menus, the bartender's uniform.
Even the bathroom where he meets Grady.
Right. Predominantly red, apparently based on the Alwani Hotel. And don't forget, the sabotage snowcat bright red. Almost this defiant burst of color before it's useless. It's like the visuals are mirroring Jack's spiraling madness.
And then the climax, the maze, it's almost entirely white with the snow. How does that fit the system?
That stark white of the snowy labyrinth where Danny gets away and Jack freezes, it gives this crucial contrast. The article argues the film's color language is built on this core opposition, red versus white-blue.
Okay.
Red becomes the color of violence, madness, horror. White and blue get linked to isolation, vulnerability, feeling trapped or powerless. And the more varied colors, the polychromy from earlier, seem to represent this more stable, though eventually fracturing, sense of reality.
What about those moments of, like, mediated reality? Halloran, watching the news on TV, the black and white photos of the hotel's past. How do they figure in?
Good point. The article suggests those bits, the news report, the old photos, they kind of highlight how the sense of what's actually real is dissolving in the film's world. That final photo, 1921, with Jack smiling, it just blurs past and present, suggests neither is totally solid in the Overlook's logic, but the raw passions, madness, violence, that deep solitude, those are terrifyingly real. The main point is Kubrick built this specific, meaningful color language just for this film.
It's a really powerful way to think about how Kubrick uses absolutely everything visually to hammer home the themes. Okay, so Jack Nicholson. His performance, it's iconic, obviously, and it really drives that descent.
Oh, Nicholson's portrayal is absolutely central, yeah. He embodies this guy who's already carrying, a heavy load, frustration, stalled writer, history of anger, this underlying tension that's there even before the Overlook's isolation kicks in.
And that slide into full-blown madness feels both gradual and just inevitable, doesn't it? You see the cracks early.
Yeah, the film tracks it meticulously. It's this slow, insidious thing, fueled by the isolation, the pressure to write, the loneliness, and that ambiguous but definitely powerful hotel influence. But what's key, I think, is Kubrick avoids any, like, explicit demonic possession.
Right. It's not like the devil made him do it.
Exactly. Jack's madness feels much more like an internal combustion, just massively amplified by the environment.
Yeah, the place and his own issues just feeding each other.
Yeah.
And Nicholson's performance is just mesmerizing. That grin, the eyebrows, the voice shifts. And, I mean, the axe scene ingrained in everyone's mind.
It's unforgettable, yeah.
Yeah.
Captures that unraveling with such chilling authenticity. Even small things, like the typing "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy" over and over,
Cow.
becomes this potent symbol of his mind just deteriorating. Language itself breaks down, just like his psyche.
And then you have Danny caught in the middle of all this terror with his own strange, unsettling abilities.
Right, Danny in The Shining. That extrasensory perception, it's critical. He can see bits of the past, the future, communicate telepathically, sense the wrongness in the Overlook.
But like we were saying, Kubrick's Danny isn't some superhero psychic. He seems really vulnerable.
Totally. He's portrayed as just a kid, not in control of these things. His shining isn't a power, it's a source of fear, confusion, makes him maybe even more susceptible to the hotel's influence. And Tony, the finger.
Oh yeah, Tony.
That manifestation of the shining, giving these cryptic warnings that are often as unsettling as the danger itself.
And again, that classic Kubrick thing.
Yeah.
Deliberately not giving us any clear, scientific or supernatural explanation for it all.
Yeah, that ambiguity is vital. By not pinning down Danny's powers or the hotel's nature, Kubrick keeps that unease, that mystery, alive. Danny's escape at the end, then, feels like this fragile win for innocence against just overwhelming darkness.
Kubrick's sheer command of the filmmaking itself is just astounding. The symmetry you mentioned, the camera movement, the sound, it all builds this palpable dread.
Oh, his formal control is classic Shining. He creates this intricate visual narrative puzzle, that obsessive symmetry in the shots, which weirdly makes things feel more off-kilter, not less. And those gliding Steadicam shots down the corridors, they're incredibly immersive. They pull you right into the space, create this deep sense of unease, like something's always just around the corner.
And the constant mirrors and reflections, they add to that fractured feeling, don't they?
Absolutely. They visually hammer home the themes of duality, psychological fragmentation in the characters and the hotel itself. Then there's the music.
Oh, the music.
Minimalist, dissonant, unsettling stuff from Wendy Carlos, Rachel Elkind, using Penderecki and Ligeti ramps up the anxiety. And Kubrick uses long pauses, uncomfortable silences, shots framed like paintings. It's all part of his unique, unsettling style.
It's like the story itself is unraveling, becoming more illogical, more dreamlike, even while the filming feels so precise, so controlled.
Exactly that. Despite the meticulous control, the story just spirals into this nightmare logic where time warps and the line between reality and hallucination gets incredibly blurry.
Which brings us right to the ending. Probably one of the most talked about, debated endings in movie history.
Yeah. I mean, on the surface, Jack freezes in the maze, Wendy and Danny escape. Seems straightforward enough. But then, that final, lingering shot, the 1921 photograph, Jack grinning in the front row of the party.
It just completely reframes everything you just saw. What do you make of that final image?
Well, the ambiguity there has fueled endless theories, hasn't it? Does it mean Jack was always part of the hotel's history, a recurring figure in its violent cycle? Is he a reincarnation of some evil in the place? Does it point to cyclical time, the past always repeating? Or is it more metaphysical, about evil being eternal?
It definitely doesn't give you any easy answers. No neat bow on top.
No, Kubrick deliberately avoids that. He leaves us with mystery, unease. That 1921 photo essentially freezes Jack in time, makes him just another ghost in the Overlook's haunted history, eternally trapped in its cycle.
So to kind of wrap this all up, we've looked at how Kubrick really radically reworked King's novel, how the Overlook acts as this almost living, psychological, temporal maze. We've dug into the symbolic power of color, driving the film's intense emotions.
Jack's devastating breakdown.
Right, Jack's descent, Danny's vulnerable connection to the supernatural, Kubrick's masterful, unsettling style, and that endlessly puzzling ending.
And ultimately, The Shining seems to suggest, doesn't it, that maybe the most terrifying darkness isn't from outside, but it resides within us, amplified by isolation, amplified by history.
And it's that power, that unflinching look at madness, isolation, the oppressive weight of a place. That's why The Shining stays with us, decades later.
Yeah. So this deep dive into The Shining, it leaves us with a final question for you, the listener, to think about. Does that cyclical nature of the Overlook, and Jack being in that 1921 photo, does it suggest that certain places, or maybe even certain types of people, are just eternally doomed to repeat these patterns of violence and madness? It's certainly a chilling thought to carry with you.